Hi, Mandy.
Hello there.
How's it
Look at
going?
us.
Yes,
We
color
are twins.
coordination.
We are twins. We have, and this was not pre-planned at all.
No, maybe it's a Venus and Gemini kind of
Exactly.
unforeseen. The twins. Yeah.
The twins. Yes. I mean, people are going to get confused. They're not going to know who's speaking.
That's a
How
good one.
extraordinary. We've never done that before, though, have we?
No, this
To
is
my
the first
knowledge.
time. This is the first time, yes.
It might be the beginning of something, regular that we sort of turn up coordinated.
Yes, I wouldn't be surprised.
So here we are,
Mm,
following up from a couple of days ago when we were talking about Mercury being in Cancer at the moment for a very extended period of time. We won't go into all that now because if anyone's interested, what is going on in the sky at the moment is pretty, we're talking of kind of things synchronizing. All of the personal planets, we were saying, are in their signs at the moment, or just about to be, like with Mars coming in on the 28th. Like, when's that? Tomorrow, yeah.
yeah.
For 4 times the length that they normally would be in that sign if they were just going forward. So, and that's all kind of happening together as a sort of like a team. It's like we're arriving somewhere and we're going to shut down and stay there for 4 times longer than than just nipping through. So we talked about this a lot on our last video, which was about Mercury in Cancer. So today we are going to switch over to Venus in Gemini, the sign of the twins. Right, so Venus in Gemini, Venus actually went into Gemini at the beginning of April, on the 3rd of April. So it's already been there. What are we now? We're just about to go into July. So it's been there all of April, all of May, all of June. It's already been there for 3 months. Venus is normally about a month in a sign. Right. And it's already been there for 3. So we probably should have talked about this before, but better late than never. And it is still there. And one of the reasons why it's so long in that sign is because it did go retrograde, which it does sort of not often like Mercury does, but it does go retrograde, Venus. Yes. So that in itself is not so unusual. But it was retrograde for about 6 weeks, and it came out of being retrograde. I keep saying what's today, 27th?
Yes.
Came out on the 25th. It stopped being retrograde, went back to direct. And it's going to sort of now make its way gradually out of Gemini. But it doesn't come out until the 7th of August. So there's still over a month to go. So it is worth talking about that. So they're the kind of, that's the dates, if you like. So what does it mean to you that Venus, A, is in Gemini, and B, that it's been there and is, for such a long time?
Well, I mean, for me, Venus and Gemini is a kind of, it's like, well, it's kind of like Gemini in the sense of like 2 contrasting or possibly contrasting archetypes. Because on the one hand, Gemini is a sign about relationships.
Yes.
And sort of finding yourself through another or through other people. There is that theme with Gemini, but most often it is expressed in a kind of quick, light-hearted, intellectual way, right?
Yes.
That need for relationship. And so like Venus, and if to understand where I'm going with this, like you can contrast Venus and Gemini with Venus and Taurus, right? Taurus is a sign ruled by Venus, and it's about security, dependability, predictability, And so when Venus is in Taurus, the needs for relationship and the relationship personality of a person become kind of centered on a routine and, you know, the known, the predictable, etc.
And also Taurus is very grounded, isn't it? It's about things taking, like you were
Yes.
saying, Gemini's light-hearted. Taurus is deep,
Yes.
isn't it? Taurus, yeah, and for the long term, all that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Very different. Very different.
But I think you can understand the Venus and Gemini kind of mode of relating and self-expression just by recalling some of the characteristics of, you know, for example, the Sun in Gemini. You know, so if you have a very strong Gemini personality, you tend to be motivated to make, you know, kind of invest your time, invest your energy in many different topics. Many different areas of interest, many different types of people also. But you're not likely gonna stick with one scene for a long time. And so when Venus is in Gemini, your relationship personality sort of becomes like that as well, you know? So you might be stimulated by a partner as long as they keep your mental, your mental kind of momentum going on, right? They keep surprising you, like with new sides of their personality or with new topics of conversation, new interests. But there's that risk of getting bored, right? So there's this kind of like contrast, an interesting contrast between wanting to engage with the other person in many different ways and being very expressive with that person and showing a high level of curiosity toward that person on the one hand, and then on the other hand, not being comfortable with kind of, you know, digging deep into that other person's psychology and kind of anchoring the relationship in the deep places of the other person, you know.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you're relating it to relationships.
Yes.
Which,
Yeah,
because Venus
considering
is
that
kind of
Venus is
the
very
reputation, the planet
often,
of love.
yes,
Yeah.
but I think Venus affects, I mean, it can affect, I mean, besides love, it can also affect like just anything that we value. Like, and often
Yes.
they be like things that we find some beauty in, you know. It also
Yes.
has an influence of the way that we spend our money and our time, you know.
What's worth investment? Things that are worth investing in.
Yes, yeah, in yourself and in others, you know. So yeah, with Gemini, I mean, on the one hand, there's that lighthearted tone, and there's that kind of being open to a very broad range of possibilities, you know, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to your own creative pursuits also, and things like, you know, I mean, the types of art that interest you, maybe the types of literature that interest you, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you feel that anyone who either has got Venus in Gemini or someone who's got like a connection with the fact that Venus has been in Gemini, it's got another month to go, but it's already been up there for 3 months. So it's a long time in that sign. By the time it comes out of this sign, Venus will have been in Gemini for a third of the year, like for 4 months. And Venus is meant to be a fast-moving personal planet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's your feelings about that kind of longer?
It's really interesting because, I mean, I know some astrologers have discussed Venus in Gemini as being a kind of a promising placement for this time because it encourages communication, like a high volume of communication. In a time of enforced isolation. And we do see that happening with people like forming like regular like chat groups on platforms like Zoom or Skype, as we do.
Absolutely.
You
Yes,
know,
yes.
relatives communicating with each other through
I'm doing a
platforms
lot
like
of
these. Yeah,
readings, tarot readings at the moment for
yeah,
people that have met someone and got very
yeah.
attached to them online,
Mm.
you know, and that they've been chatting now for sort of maybe 2 or 3 months. They've not even met yet, but they're taking these connections really seriously. Whereas in normal times, if you would met someone online that you were like, say, chatting to, and the chat had gone on for that long, you would kind of think, well, don't they actually kind of want to meet you? But because of the lockdown, there
Yeah,
is a kind of like, it's, well, I know that we're coming out of it a bit now, but there's been a sort of a good reason. It would have been difficult to have sort of like met within the kind of like, you know, the allowances of what we're allowed to do or lately. So I think people, if they have met someone online that they've liked, they've had to get to know each other longer in that kind of detached online
mm,
intellectual kind of arena. So
mm.
I find that interesting that we've had that signification in the sky that I think has reflected a lot of kind of what has probably gone on down here when it comes to relationships.
Yes, yes.
And if there's one sign
Mm,
that is going to kind of resonate with this really well, it is Libra, which is the other air sign, which
mm.
is one of the two signs that Venus rules, because Venus rules Taurus, that lovely earth sign, but Venus also rules Libra,
Yeah,
which is an air sign, and which is all about partnerships and relationships. So Venus in Gemini, although in itself that is not dignified, it's neither good nor bad. Venus in Gemini, it's not kind of given a kind of a, what would the word be? The qualification one way or the other is sort of neutral.
dignity. It's not
Or
given a dignity. Yeah.
what's the word you have used occasionally when it's not given one?
Yeah, it
Come
used to be
on.
called like the traditional word is peregrine.
I knew you wanted to say
Kind of
it,
because it
yes.
means like wandering, right? As in the
Okay, yeah,
peregrine
yeah.
falcon, you know, so it's wandering out of
Okay,
home.
yeah, you got to say it. There you go. But yeah, but the point I'm making is, yeah, although the being in Gemini, it has no sort of like dignity one way or the other. It is very, very strong with anyone who happens to have Venus in Libra. I would say this has been a good time for anyone who has got Venus in Libra to have good communication and connections
Yeah, that
with
makes sense. Yeah.
either with loved ones or just kind of people that they like or people that are important to them. I think this will have been great for the Libras,
Yeah.
actually.
It sort of makes you wonder this odd coincidence, right? Between the Venus and Gemini profile and the way people are communicating today. I mean, that coincidence sort of makes you wonder what collective change in communication might happen once Venus moves into Cancer, you know? Because Venus in Cancer is more concerned about really deep, meaningful, psychologically nuanced kind of communications, you know? So yeah, we'll have to keep our eyes open and see what
Yes,
happens then.
I mean
Yeah.
that will probably kind of blend quite well with the those who have the Venus in Taurus, but we're not talking about that today. But the Cancer and the Taurus would go nicely together. But
Yes.
the Libra and the Gemini is really strong.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think actually, so Mars, because it's moving in Aries tomorrow, I believe, right?
yeah.
Moving
For
into
6
Aries
months.
for 6 months. So moving into Aries means that it will, well, by sign, it already makes a sextile with Venus for the whole duration of Venus's stay in Gemini. But
Yes,
I would
yes,
imagine the closer in degree it gets to that sextile, that harmonious 60-degree aspect.
yes,
Um,
yes.
People born around that time or people like influenced by that transit will probably feel um, driven, really, really driven to kind of to express themselves through frequent communication, you know. And find the kind of the assertive dimension of their personality through communication, through regular communication.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, as a tarot reader, I mean, we both read the tarot, and I just do find, not all, but I mean, there's a large percentage of people that come for tarot readings. It is about relationships. You know, the world exists because of relationships, whether it's love relationships or difficulties with kind of family members or friendship. You know, that it's other people. We are very affected by other people, and that comes up a lot in tarot readings and why people want to have tarot readings. And I kind of like feel communication is very, very often the problem, that people just don't have the clarity they want. They don't understand what's going on in someone else's mind. People are not everybody is a kind of an expert in how they are comfortable about expressing themselves.
Yes.
So I you know, in some ways I'm feeling this is quite a good thing, this 4 months in Gemini, in a way.
Yeah, and I think it's important for anyone who wants to gain a better understanding of their relationship personality, how they are in relationships. It's important for them to look in which sign Venus was in their, you know, on their birth, on the date of their birth, so
it never goes more than 45 degrees away from the sun.
So never more than 2 signs away from the sun. Yeah.
Yes.
So it would be important for them to find that placement, and then also to find if, and you can only find this out if you get deeper into astrology, but we're here to help in case you need that information. To find out if Venus is in a strong placement in terms of the sign, like for example, if it's in Taurus or Libra, it's the ruler. If it's in Pisces, it's exalted or well treated, you know.
Yes.
Or you know, if it's being affected by one of the harsher planets called the malefics, basically Mars and Saturn, that would all have an impact on how you present and express yourself in relationships and what sort of expectations you have from the other person in relationships. And these are not only romantic relationships, but I think they would extend to all relationships that have like a lasting value to you, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's important to probably everybody in some way, shape or form at some time or other.
Yes.
You know, unless you really genuinely are a hermit and you are out of your own choice, you just don't want to sort of mix with anybody. Most people have to kind of interact with someone or various people at some points. And so I think Venus is a very important planet, and I do honestly believe that it is worth knowing your astrology. It's worth knowing where and Mercury that we did the other day, but these are the personal planets. So as opposed to just, I don't want to get into this, but generational planets that are the very, very sort of far away ones, that are the slow movers. They move so slowly that a lot of people who were born around the time that you were born would have the same generational planet, because they move so slowly through the signs. Yeah. I mean, some of them are in signs for like 7 years in one sign. So everyone born within a 7-year period would all share that. They would all have that planet in the same sign. But these personal planets, Mercury, Venus and Mars, are much faster movers. So it varies from everybody's charts, and there's a lot of information to be gained. So I have them here. Shall I do it today?
Yes.
Shall I be Mrs. Venus? Yes. So we're going to do this is going to be quite a short recording compared to the last one, but we're going to do a tarot reading focusing on the fact that there is this Venus in Gemini at the moment, and this reading will apply right up until the 5th of August. So it's got kind of a good, 5 weeks of, possibilities here. And this particular reading, I'm going to, it's a 4-card reading. It's quite simple. First card is if your sun is in Gemini. Now, if you're listening to this, you know if you're a Gemini. When we say if your sun is in Gemini, your sun sign is what your birth sign is. That's it. It's like the sun was in Gemini at the time that you were born. Everybody knows where their sun signs are, even if it's only a word. If you are a Gemini, okay, the first card is for you, and it's the purpose of the reading is how Venus in Gemini is going to affect anyone whose sun is also in Gemini. Okay, so it doesn't matter if your Venus isn't in Gemini. If you know your sun is in Gemini, it's how this Venus being there as well is going to affect you. Okay. Second card is if your moon is in Gemini. So if you know where your moon is, and a lot less people will know that, but it's not difficult to find out. Here we are, and we're going to have our contact details at the end of the video, or on the little write-up. Our contact details will be there, and you can message either of us, and we will tell you, as long as you let us know your date, full date with the year as well, time and place of birth, we can tell you where your sun, moon, rising sign is, but you need the time of birth definitely to know the rising sign, because that one changes every 2 hours. Moon, we possibly could get without the time. Depends. Sort of, yeah. But the sun, the moon, the rising sign, and Mercury and Venus, we can very quickly tell you in which signs all of those are in your chart. So I'll stop that now. We're happy to do that for nothing. No fee. We will just tell you, as long as you give us the information we need to be able to do it. So if your sun is in Gemini, or your moon is in Gemini, or your rising sign is Gemini, or finally, if your Venus is in Gemini, these are your tarot readings, and how that Venus moon will affect you. And if you have nothing to do with Gemini, but you would like a reading anyway, you've got the contact details. Okay. Okay, so sun, moon, rising, and Venus in Gemini. How does that Venus in Gemini, how's that either affected you already since it went in April? How's it been affecting you, or what can you expect really more? That's more what I had in mind when I was doing the reading, like what's coming up over the next 5 weeks. Okay. Right, sun in Gemini. Oh, hello. This is a good one. Well, okay, so if you are a Gemini person, and I would say this Venus in Gemini, I think this is kind of like maybe raised your communication levels, which I would say this is particularly possibly aimed at people who've been chatting to people a lot online and maybe haven't been able to sort of see them over the lockdown period. But I kind of feel that the lockdown is now easing up, and I just feel you'll be pretty anxious to turn those thoughts and those air communications into physical action. That was pretty easy to read. Khalid, I mean, have you got any alternative interpretation on that? But that was my immediate reaction to that. Yeah. And you can interpret that in whatever way you think fit. But I think people have kind of now got a little bit fed up with all the kind of old chatting, texting. It's kind of, come on, let's meet up. Let's actually kind of get together.
It does have this energy of like manifestation, wanting to actually materialize an idea rather than just have it be an idea.
Yes, and just be talked about. Yeah. Let's do something about it.
I mean, normally I'm trying to decide if I'm having a a sexual impression of this card, which sometimes it sort of seems to invite.
It is quite easy to kind of go that way with it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
would say that is a possible, let's be grown up about it. That is definitely a possible interpretation of it, but not necessarily the only interpretation. I do think it's about putting words into action. Whatever you've been discussing or kind of, planning, I think it's time to actually now do it. That is truly what it means.
I really like
If
this.
you are Gemini, yeah.
I really like this for Sun and Gemini. First, it's a fiery card.
Yes.
So just
the sun is exalted in Aries.
In Aries, fire. Yeah. Sun is fire, is a great ball of fire, and this is like the fire archetype, right? All the aces are archetypes of their elements, right? So yeah, I think this is coming across to me as a strong kind of message.
And there's going to be quite a lot of people who, for the Venus in Gemini, that are going to have Aries suns. I mean, this would be Aries for me, because it goes up to the 45 degrees. So people who have got an Aries sun, although the reading is for Gemini suns, but would possibly share that message. But it was specifically for Gemini sun signs.
Okay. Now Gemini, you should be very excited about this one.
Gemini moons.
Yes.
You're excited.
You should be excited about it.
I know. I am a Gemini moon.
Yeah.
What is the message for me? I think I'm Mrs. Gemini moon. All over the place, right? What is the message, right? I hope it's as good as the Gemini sun one. Oh, all right. Okay. Gemini moon. This is quite interesting, actually. Okay, so I'm feeling with the Gemini moon a little bit, now that we're coming out of the lockdown, because the moon, I think it is quite an intuitive sort of place, and it is quite naturally a dreamy place, the moon, whereas the sun sign, it's almost gearing itself up to make it a reality. Whereas the moon is quite comfortable having it all as kind of like ideas and kind of like, I think the moon is quite comfortable being more sort of internal about it all and just more, hypothetically speaking, do you know what I mean? And I kind of feel that now that we can get out there and start meeting people, I feel what the message I'm getting here is that it's knocked a little bit of confidence out of the moon. It's almost like there's maybe a reluctance to actually put your money where your mouth is with the moon. It was kind of braver to be able to do it when you didn't actually have to do it, if that makes sense. When you have the excuse of hiding behind the lockdown, right? Mm-hmm. And now that you kind of like are, to some extent, you're allowed out, but you might not feel safe about going out. So now that you are allowed to do more, I just feel some of those ideas seemed better when they were just ideas than the possibility of actually having to do them. Have you got any idea? I'm going to test you here, what card this might be.
So you're talking specifically about ideas that might have seemed good while under lockdown and now difficult to...
Well, maybe not such a good idea now that there is the possibility that you actually, instead of just talking about them, you actually could get out there and do them. I just feel that the confidence has been somewhat kind of knocked a little bit on the Gemini moon.
Ideas, okay. Maybe Two of Swords reversed? No. There may be possibilities.
Six of Wands reversed.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad card at all, but it has come up reversed. And I'm kind of seeing all of these as, bravado and everything, while that Venus has been in Gemini for a long time, it's talking about, I want to do this and I want to do that, and I'm going to, as soon as this lockdown is over, I'm going to do this, that, and can't wait to get out there and keep in touch with everyone, see you all, and all of a sudden I can do it now, and it's like, oh, got to put my money where my mouth is now. Look, yeah, maybe not quite so comfortable as when it was just all in the head. That's what I'm getting for the Gemini moon. I don't know if you've got a different take on that. Feel free. That's the card that came up.
I think the way you read it makes sense. I'm feeling like it makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if your rising sign is Gemini, how's that, affected by this Venus in Gemini? Okay. Venus in Gemini. Okay, so I'm going here with the Venus rules Taurus, and Venus, it was like you spoke about earlier, all of the things of value. And I feel that you've had quite a long time this is actually quite easy. I think this Venus I'm loving the rising sign. I think the Venus being in Gemini for this extended period of time, I think it's given you a chance, Venus rising, to really think about what is important to you in your life, who is important to you in your life, what you actually do want to invest your time and energy and values into. I think you will have made some personal discoveries or reinforced your values during this extended period. And I think the Venus rising people will actually have really benefited quite greatly from Venus being in Gemini for this extended period, and that will reflect on their personal relationships with those that are close to them as well. 10 of coins. Very nice for the Venus rising. I think this has been a beneficial placement for the Venus rising people. Anything to add, Khalid?
Do you, because I'm wondering, because the 10 of Pentacles also, it comes attached to these like associations of maybe being too comfortable with what you already have, or with the privileges that come with what you have. Like, do you feel there's any challenge in that card?
I possibly would have done if it had come up reversed, to be fair, but it came up upright, and for me, I feel I'm seeing this as quite a positive placement. But yeah, I mean, somebody else might have read the challenge, the shadower, more shadowy side of it. But I
mean, it's a nice place to be in if it's your place, that house, with all its comforts and luxury.
Yes,
it's a great place to be in.
I would say possibly, like, let's say for example that you were Venus rising and your sun was in Taurus or something, but you had the Venus rising, so this reading counted for you. I would say that would be very strong.
If you had the Gemini rising. Yeah, okay.
Sorry. If you had yes, thank you for correcting. If you had the Gemini rising, but your sun was in Taurus, so that physically works because of the 45 degrees. Yeah, this Venus being in Gemini, I think would have affected you in a pretty positive way.
Yes.
I think that would have really made you value your family, what's important to you. Yeah, I think this
Taurus loves that kind of stability in particular.
Yeah, I think this would have been a really, really good time for you. You'll have come out this the other end just more grateful, and I don't mean that in a kind of a humble, but I don't mean that in a pitiful way. I just think really appreciating what you've got. Yeah. Okay, so last but not least, this is if you have Venus in Gemini in your chart. If that's where your Venus is, and the Venus in the skies come to shake hands with you and say hello, what does that mean for a whole 4 months? Oh, God. Wow. This could not be more different than the last card. Good God, right? Okay. So let me just break this down. You have got Venus in Gemini in your chart. So you are quite open to change. You're quite adaptable. You're flexible. You're ready for new challenges. I also think that you're got it. Wow. I also think the fact that you have been absolutely dying for this lockdown to be over so that your curiosity can kind of like expand on just being shut away, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's time, you've been dying for this. I think the fact that Venus has gone back into direct motion, tying in with the fact that the lockdown is kind of like really, really easing off, you're absolutely kind of out there, Venus in Gemini people, ready to kind of make new friends, have new experiences, to put this whole lockdown thing behind you. I think you just cannot wait to free yourself and get out there and get on with it. The
Tower! Wow.
When you look at it as kind of breaking free from the lockdown, it's like, get me out of this prison.
This is very interesting because the last reading we did, which was for Mercury in Cancer, the 3 cards that came up for Sun in Cancer, Moon in Cancer, and Cancer rising were all what are called the minor cards, so outside of the 22 majors. But the one that was for the planet itself, so for anyone with Mercury in Cancer, that was, I believe it was the moon reverse, which is a major
yes, it
card.
was. Yes, it
and
was.
It's the same thing happening here, right?
Yes, it has.
This is definitely, this isn't just...
That 4 months of being locked away, where you're being kind of like, oh my God, it's like all the things that you love doing, that you love eating, that you love listening to, all your loves have been so restricted. Venus in Gemini people, I bet you are the ones that are like, bring it on, this lockdown lifting, right? As opposed to kind of like the moon in Gemini, oh my God, I've got to get out there now. Like, it's so like different. And it's like the sun in Gemini, you're like, right, okay, time for action now, right? And then I think the Venus rising people, this has been a very good period of time. It's made me really appreciate all my friends, all my family, all the things that are important to me. Venus in Gemini. Get me out of here now. I can't take it anymore. Oh my God. I really enjoyed that reading.
Me too, it's like basically, I think these 2 readings we've done so far are confirming a major premise of thought. I mean, a major thought premise in a lot of astrology, which is that, let's say, a transit through a sign will affect you, particularly if in your birth chart, the same transiting planet is in the same sign.
Yes.
Yes,
definitely so. Because the conjunction of it. I mean, theoretically, because Venus in Gemini is Gemini's an air sign, it's probably going to be most dramatic. Like I said, I think it'd be very good for the Libras, right? Obviously, it's dramatic, but it's kind of vibrant, if you like, for the actual Geminis. And I think the Aquarius will kind of like feel its... the Aquarians will feel it too, because that's the other air sign. I think this may trigger the Aquarius. I've got Venus in Aquarius actually, and Aquarius is quite likes the unusual, kind of thinks out of the box a bit, and I think this this Venus in Gemini would probably have triggered, you know, like let's be a little bit different, let's be a little bit outrageous, that sort of thing. So for the air signs, they'll really kind of, I don't know, I think it'd be good for the air signs. Yeah, maybe, I don't know, do you think it's also, I think Venus in Gemini, everybody should have a reading. I think it's going to affect everybody, every sign differently. It could go one way or the other,
Sure.
to be quite honest.
Sure. But it
You
seems
know,
like it's definitely going to be dramatic for anyone born with their Venus in Gemini. Period.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So there you have it. Short and sweet today. We will get together, I think, one day next week, because tomorrow is the big day when Mars enters its own sign of Aries that it rules. So it's very strong in Aries.
Yes.
Right? That to me is Mars in Aries. And it's going to be there for 6 whole months.
Yep.
Normally it's 6 weeks, but it's 6 months. So it's got that same elongated thing going on that we'll just have to see how it goes.
Yeah.
And during that 6 months that it's there in Aries, it will be affected by different things that connect with it through the other planets. So we can talk about those over the next few months. But I think the first reading should literally be just about, in isolation, Mars being in Aries for the forthcoming 6 months. So that will be our next video. If you're all right with that,
can't wait to do it. Actually, can't wait to do it.
And let's see what outfits we turn up in for that.
Yeah, it has to be definitely. It's got to be red. I mean, it can't be totally spontaneous. From now in my mind,
I'm planning mine already. Already, right? Okay.
All right,
Thanks
great.
a lot.
This was so
Take
much
care.
fun.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.